Will the Jews finally be freed from Khazarian mafia slavery as Israel is liberated? The world is headed for a new age, not a new world order. As a part of this, the Jewish people, high-level slaves of Satan-worshipping Khazarian gangsters, are about to be freed from thousands of years of Babylonian slavery. That is why the large state of Israel is now under full martial law as the Khazarian-controlled government there faces an ultimatum to surrender and free the Jews and Arab hostage, according to Russian FSB and Pentagon sources. A clear sign that the Jewish people are finally waking up came last week when Jewish human rights groups petitioned their government to stop arming neo-Nazis. Many have waking up now to the fact that Nazism and Zionism are two sides of the same coin. These are the really people whom Revelation of 2:9 in the Bible refers to as those who falsely claim to be Jews but are in fact a synagogue of Satan. Pentagon sources are also saying the British monarchy has formally surrendered to the U.S. military on behalf of the Khazarian bloodline aristocratic families of Europe. During the U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the U.K., when Melania refused to curtsy, it appears that the Queen has surrendered the British Empire in cable to Trump, and to save face, Prince Charles and William did not show up to avoid the indignity, the Pentagon sources explains. We can now say that it was the Europeans, including the British branch of the Rothschild family, who were behind the March 11, 2011 Fukushima tsunami and nuclear attack on Japan. This is likely to come out once the arrest of European Khazarian cabalists start in earnest, according to White Dragon Society sources. However, MI6 sources say that while the Rothschild were indeed involved in Fukushima, along with the P2 Annetley family, a portion of the U.S. Space Command, and others, the situation is not so simple. They say the Fukushima attack was a failed attempt to keep the owners of the G7 group in power. So they say, what is now really going on is that Western leaders are trying to come up with a united front in negotiations with Asian secret societies over the formation of a world government. For that reason, the European Royal Dominate Committee of 200 is willing to cede the day-to-day management of negotiations to the U.S. military government represented by Trump, the sources say. In any case, the trouble at the NATO summit meeting last week between Trump and other NATO leaders was another sign that the Khazarian-controlled post-war order is collapsing. Basically, Trump told the other leaders to pay more protection money, and that they told him to buzz off. This photo shows all the NATO leaders looking one way while Trump looks the other. There was almost certainly paused by a sent message to show that these leaders, including Trump, actually take orders from elsewhere. It's obvious to any rational observer that NATO serves no usual function except to lobbying for arms companies. The whole structure of propaganda and lies portraying Russia as an aggressor and a threat to Europe is Khazarian doublespeak with no basis in fact. The European countries, acting rationally, would rather spend their money on something other than military-industrial instruments of mass murder. That is why a recent opinion poll showed that only 37% of Germans want the U.S. military to remain in their country. What is really going on here is that an agreement has already been reached between the U.S. and Russia over NATO, the Ukraine, Syria, and Israel, according to Pentagon and FSB sources. As this new paper goes online, Trump will be meeting with Russia President Vladimir Putin to discuss this, Pentagon sources confirm. Regardless of what the public announcements are made after the meeting, FSB and Pentagon sources say the U.S. and Russia deal involves the U.S. recognition of the Russian annexation of the ethnic Russian-dominated eastern Ukrainian province and the removal of the Khazarian Nazi regime there. In addition, the Russians and Iranians, with implicit support from China and the U.S. military, will force the large state of Israel to comply with international norms and agreements. As we have mentioned before in this newspaper, a deal has already been reached between the White Dragon Society and the Gnostic Illuminati that allows for Russia to take over from the U.S. the guarantee of security for Western Europe, except for England. In addition, A Russian FSB agent will arrive in Asia this autumn to discuss a new financial system with the WDS, the Japanese government, the U.S. military, and Asian secret societies. WDS sources say the details of the new financial system have yet to be settled, but there is a general agreement that it will involve a combination of cryptocurrency and gold. There is also agreement that India will be given a much bigger role that it now has, they say. The U.S. will get more financing in exchange for sharing some of its secret high technology with the rest of the world, they add. However, for now, despite this agreement, Trump has been asking Europeans to buy more from American weapons, raise NATO spending 4% of GDP, and I don't buy them from Russia. Buy from us because we protect you from the Russians, since the United States is still de facto bankrupt. That is also why Trump is imprisoning import duties on Chinese goods. The U.S. needs money to keep itself in business. Why the U.S. was controlled by Khazarian oligarchs, and it should be spelled oligarchs. It did not matter to them that the U.S. as a country was being impoverished by its trade deficit. That is because the Chinese were using the dollars they earned with the U.S. trade surplus to buy the Middle Eastern oil from the oligarchs. The oligarchs, in turn, used this money to finance the enslavement of humanity and the creation of a Khazarian-controlled world order. That is one of the reasons why, after the NATO meeting, Trump told the CBS he thought the Khazarian mob construct known as the EU to be a foe. What he means is that they have been draining the U.S. economy through trade, while making the Americans pay for the protection even as they work against U.S. interests. A new piece of evidence for the Khazarian plan to enslave humanity emerged last week when the senior member of an Asian secret society told this writer that they had received a proposal from the Khazarians to use every Japanese person as collateral for bonds. That is why the Japanese government has been trying to impose a mine number system on its citizenry. The Asians, knowing this would extend the system of Babylonian debt slavery from the West to Japan, turned the offer down. In the U.S., meanwhile, the liberation of that country is accelerating under the leadership of the U.S. military and agencies. On that front, a Pentagon source who told us last week that Brett Kavanaugh was not going to be selected for the Supreme Court had the following explanation for why he was. Things are not what they seem, as Trump may have picked Brett Kavanaugh at the last minute despite his heavy Bush baggage and cover up for the Vince Foster murder for the Democrats and expand the political capital and lose the midterms if they block him. In other words, BK is another Trojan horse who will allow the good guys to control the Supreme Court in the autumn, even as the bad guys think he's still their man. The Pentagon sources are now also saying there could be over 80,000 arrests in the U.S. once the legal machinery is in place to process all the Khazarian mobsters who are going to be put away. Only after that is finished will they start dealing in earnest with the Europeans and with the criminal slave government in Japan, the sources say. The cleanup in Japan will begin in earnest next year after April, when the new emperor formally ascends the throne, according to Asian secret society sources. They say that also when Korean unification, the possible unification of Korea with Japan, will also begin. Japan will also open its door to large-scale immigrations starting next year, the sources say. Meanwhile, in Mexico, hugely popular President-elected Andrés Manuel López Obrador has begun a cleanup for the Khazarian mob in his country as well. Pentagon sources say they will not interfere in the Mexican cleanup, but add that he was being warned not to allow Mexico to host foreign missiles or bases, join BRICS, cooperate with drug cartels, or mess with gringos. That should work except for the part about the drug cartels who will be incorporated into Mexico's legal economy whether the Americans like it or not, say the Vatican sources connected to AMLO. That is because legalizing and regulating drug produces better results than half decades of the failed war on drugs, they note. The U.S. will eventually figure this out.